Welcome to another episode of TPS Traffic Jam. Today, joining me in studio is Brian Makse. And he is the co-host of the Dave's Corner Garage.
Yes.
A racer, a journalist. What else do you do?
YouTuber.
YouTuber.
I've got a column at Haggerty and soon to be Haggerty Motorsports, which I keep sending them stories and they don't publish them. So the site's launching soon.
And as soon as that goes, we'll be inundated with your content.
With my stories about racing. Oh, yeah.
So we got a lot to talk about today. I don't know which camera to look at right now. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're talking about racing. We're talking about safety, and then just stuff and things, which is pretty much how I do every episode, which is just whatever comes up, we'll go with. We've got some great content that you brought in, some YouTube clips and some racing videos I look forward to looking into.
Yep.
And so how long have you been racing?
I decided to go racing in the early 90s. So it's actually 30 years since I did my first pro race.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you just woke up one day, I want to go fast?
Yeah, I kind of knew that from when I was a kid.
Because we talk about this all the time on Ask a Traffic Cop. We talk about it on just in general on social media. We're always told, we go fast on the street because we don't have access to tracks in Ontario. There's nowhere for us to go fast, and that's why we're going to do it on the highway.
Yeah, that's been the same story for 30 years.
Yeah,
right. And I heard exactly the same thing when I was a kid, and I was one of those, I grew up in Niagara. I'm a rural kid, and I figured it out. And my first track day was probably 3 or 3.5 hours from home each way, and that's what I did.
There's investment. You decide you want to do it, and to do it safely, you make the investment.
Yes.
It's not just take off on the DVP or the 401 and drive like that.
Exactly. And I mean, we can go on about the inherent safety of a racetrack versus public roads, and for so many reasons. There's a reason why we race on a racetrack.
But so the I've got Bembo brakes isn't a sufficient excuse for why I can go fast.
Nope.
But I hear it all the time. I had a video. I don't know if you've heard of of TAC, the Traffic Accident Commission out of Australia.
No.
They have the most amazing videos. They are graphic. They make you cry. They make
I'm sure I've seen this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's one where a guy is standing on it's actually a runway that they've shut down. And they have two cars, identical cars. I think they're 2007 not so wonderful cars. And they're, same driver, same, and they take off, and one of them is doing 5 kilometers faster than the other. And this chap is, just nonchalant talking to the camera as these cars speed by. And you'll notice. So they say, a truck, and they have an 18-wheeler pull out, and he says they both apply the brakes at the same time.
Yep.
And the first one just plows right underneath, takes the roof of the truck off, and the other one makes contact with the windshield but stops.
Yep.
And he says the difference between these was 5 kilometers, and the speed at impact was 30 or 40 kilometers difference. I don't remember the numbers.
Sure.
But the amazing response from the public who watched it was like, this is baloney. This is just here to manipulate us. It's just here to make us feel bad. 5 kilometers can't be. This is not right. So, they did a very successful campaign of Wipe 5 Off, saying that the difference of 5 kilometers could mean the difference between life and death. But what do you say?
Well, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. But what I do know is that stopping distance, and I'll do a lousy job of explaining this, but the difference in stopping distance is not a multiple; it's exponential. So if you're, whatever the stopping distance was on that 5 kilometer differential, it is exponential. It's not just a multiple or a factor. It's exponential.
I think they said that you take 50% of your speed off in the last 50%. I can't remember now. We'll have to play it because it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I can think about my racing brake traces, and that's a different thing. We apply maximum braking pressure as often as possible. That's the whole point. That's the other thing about driving on the road. Like if talking about braking, if you are not accustomed to really getting on the brake pedal, you're not going to be able to stop the vehicle. And for someone like me who's been doing this and teaching it and whatever, I have no problem getting to 100% brake pedal pressure of whatever I'm driving.
You mean about threshold braking?
Well, that in the old days, yeah, that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And folks that grew up with these with systems in place that do a lot of it for you just don't drive the same way. They rely on the technology. They rely on things to make them feel comfortable and confident and to do the work.
Yeah.
So if those things fail, or if you're put in a situation where they're less effective,
Yes.
bad things happen.
Oh, in no time at all. And while my mother was still alive, I would get her to go out every winter, and when it snowed, go and just hammer the brake pedal, just so you know what it feels like, because she grew up driving, cars without ABS and that sort of thing. And of course, as technology progressed, she was driving that. And if you haven't felt what an ABS pedal feels like and what that pedal pressure feels like, and of course some cars make a sound, it's going to be disturbing. So you're like, these are the things people need to work on.
It's funny that you say you got her to go hammer the brakes. When the laws changed in September of last year, people got really up in arms saying, how, because this is about stunt driving, because now drifting or losing traction intentionally on private property is stunt driving.
Yes.
So they said, well, how am I supposed to learn how to drive in the snow if I can't force myself to do donuts to then force myself out of a donut? Like the argument for a second made sense, and then, well, hang on a second.
Right.
It's about stopping and not losing control.
Exactly.
Not about
you are, on public roads, if you've lost the rear of the car, you're not getting it back. Like, unless you're highly, highly skilled and are practicing this all the time, if you don't do any of this stuff, you're not getting the car. If you practice it once a year, you're not getting the car back. Like it's gone. You're around and you're in the bushes. So, I like the idea of people practicing these things, and there are places that teach this stuff.
Amazing.
Who'd
have thunk?
Yeah.
I remember my brother signed up when he was a kid. He took the BMW driving school, and I think it was at Downsview Military Base, and they went out, did great stuff.
Yep.
As a police officer, we are at the Ontario Police College. They have a giant fire hose and sprays, and they have a slick tarmac. They even disable ABS to mess with us. And those are controlled environments, and those tracks in those environments, for the purposes of teaching, they fall outside of the stunt driving regulations. So you can't legally do that.
Yeah.
And that's the place to do it, where safety is a program. And there's a whole lot to talk about with safety.
Yes.
You, as a racer, you do some pretty wild stuff. I was watching a video of you going really, really fast.
Yes.
But you wouldn't do that on the road, and that's where there's that divide. So, as we come around this circle, we see people doing 200 kilometers an hour on the Don Valley Parkway.
Yep.
While impaired, on top of everything else.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Like the one clip I was, doing 200 and something on the racetrack.
I'm gonna be at the dentist tomorrow, and not for anything fun.
So this is what you can do when you've been racing for 30 years. You can go and run a fast lap and have a chat with your mate in the right seat.
So this is a stock vehicle?
This is a bone stock from the factory Hyundai Elantra N with a manual transmission. So that's the Hyundai Performance brand. So they have N lines, they look fast. The N is the proper fast one. So this is a 300 horsepower front wheel drive, highly developed road car.
Right on. Well, it's available with a manual transmission. I got to let my buddy know, because he refuses to drive anything that isn't a manual. And he stopped buying Mercedes because he couldn't buy
they don't do that anymore.
And now he has a Subaru, but he had the last one of the last. He cannot. So now he's looking for a manual.
Yeah, they keep disappearing. So we sell Save the Manuals merch on our merch store. But
saw that.
So this is
It's also an anti-theft device, right?
It is. It certainly is. So this is Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, my home track here in Canada, and very, very fast, very challenging. The camera doesn't do it justice, so this back straight is all uphill.
I can see the speedo. It's 189 kilometers an hour. It doesn't look like you're moving.
I get 208 just over the crest of the hill here, just past the bridge. There's 208. And, the thing is, I'm not there to set a fast lap. Like, I got the big check mark on my racing career. I don't need to prove, anything to anybody about racing. But this circuit is my favorite because it's so challenging. It's so tough. And it's a great place to learn, a great place for me to teach someone. And that car was so much fun to drive.
Do they make an SUV that goes like this?
They make the Kona. which I also drove that day. I didn't film it, but the little Kona crossover, they do an N version with the same drivetrain.
I keep saying because I want to find something that I fit in.
You won't fit in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might fit in this. They lower the seat in the Elantra N, so there's a little bit more headroom, but the Kona you wouldn't fit.
It's a story of my life. 6'5", big guy. Nothing's made for me.
Yep.
So, people look at that and I guess there's an assumption that it costs money to go play.
It does.
And it's inconvenient because I can't do it on my way to work. So they want to get their thrills on the road. And
Right.
I drive every day, and I annoy people. I set my cruise control to the speed limit posted, and that's what I do. Now, many people don't realize, and one of my favorite comments and questions that comes without fail.
Yeah.
How much over the speed limit am I legally allowed to go? And I shake my head.
That's a very simple answer.
And yet, and then they say, okay, but seriously, how much over the limit can I go before you pull me over? And, it's all banking on every officer is going to have their own threshold.
Yeah.
Every officer is going to determine. And we're not going to go find and spend the day looking for people doing 5 over. That's not the goal of what we do.
No.
But it's also not to suggest that the if I tell you that you're allowed to do 5 over or 10 over or 15 over and we're not going to enforce it, that is unofficially making that the new speed limit, and that's not helping anybody.
Right.
But there's this belief that they're entitled to go fast because fun. You're taking my fun away.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not it. And we get because we all go for years and years and years without having incidents, let alone a crash. And you get lulled into this false sense of security where, the roads are safe and whatever. We know that's not the case. I drive a lot. I'd probably drive 50,000 kilometers a year.
Oh, wow.
In different places and split my time between Toronto and Southern California. So I get to see, basically I'm there for months and I get to see what LA drivers are like. So it's a very different driving culture. And I will say I prefer to drive in LA. Really? Yeah.
What's the difference?
So the big difference, what what we see on our roadways and traffic jams. There's all this, everybody's got they want a 1-car advantage, so they cut somebody off. And I mean, I've seen people run into each other because they're it's just the silliest.
Unpredictable. It's really unpredictable here.
Oh well, the last one I remember I think was deliberate. So I'm like, I am not sticking around for this. I got to get to work. But in LA, everybody knows that it's a traffic jam, and the road is filled, so there's no gaps. So that discourages people jumping from lane to lane. So if you're changing lanes, it's for a very specific reason. Whereas here, somebody's just trying to get a 1-car length advantage.
Well, they're more important than the other person.
Exactly.
It's a little bit of an entitlement issue.
Yeah.
But we see motorcycles cutting through, and in LA, you can actually lane shift.
Yeah. So my routine is on the shuttle from the airport to the parking garage where I'm picking up a car, usually a lovely car. It's like, okay, lane splitters are here. And that's sort of my mental routine. And inevitably on that first drive, I'll encounter a couple of lane splitters. And for the most part, they're pretty good because it's the law. Sometimes they're allowed to have up to a 10-mile-an-hour differential. And most of them are pretty good.
And that's so. Again, they've created laws to allow for it. I think the lanes are a little wider. There's a little more room, I think,
on some of the freeways.
It was only the one that I was on when I was there last, and it's a long time ago. But I vaguely remember it being spacious. And here, it's just unpredictable. And so it is illegal here, and I think for good reason because I can't tell you I see it every day.
Sure,
it's scary.
And you're a motorcycle guy.
And yes, I am not fond of the idea of someone pulling out in front of me, whether it be from a side road, a side street, another lane, falling from the sky, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
I want to reduce my risk. And to your point about changing for minor things to try and get ahead one spot. People are almost perpetually moving backwards. Every time you change lanes, the other lane goes. I never understood. Fred Flintstone showed me that
exactly. So I have I'm old and I have a routine and I've paid attention to traffic patterns. So if I'm on a 3-lane something, whether it's the 401 or QEW or whatever it is, when there's a traffic jam, I'm in the middle lane and that seems to be the most drama-free.
I agree.
And it just kind of works that way. And typically, because I'm driving a brand new vehicle, they all have adaptive cruise, and some have genuine hands-off, low-speed follow. So I can go hands-off.
That's I've other than playing with my buddy's Model X, very briefly,
Yep.
which felt very awkward for me because it was when it first came out. He's got the first gen, and I'm like, and I'd signal and it didn't work. And I'm like, I'm just never doing this again.
Right.
But it's cool. And one day, like I'm on the wait list for a Cybertruck.
Oh boy,
I might
you're gonna be
retire.
waiting a long time.
I might retire before it happens. And I've thought about putting an order in for a Lightning. And
Yeah.
it looks cool.
I mean, I'm going to share some opinions. Love what Tesla has done. Love the company that Elon Musk has built, but I don't recommend the cars unless you have more than one vehicle at home. You don't want to rely on that to be your sole vehicle.
Good to know.
They're not quite a complete car company.
My spare 150 grand is on hold right now. So
okay.
I'm not rushing to go buy anything. And I'm actually trying to decide if I even buy something new now. I have something, I own it, it's mine. Do I go and invest something else because it's got I do like the wireless Apple CarPlay. I like to have.
Yeah, they all have that now.
I don't.
Yeah.
Mine was before that, but my wires eventually wear out. I take them in. Something you may not know: Apple will warranty wires as long as you have warranty on your phone.
Oh, cool.
So when they wear out, they do.
They certainly do.
I take them in, I get a new one. I'm like, happy days.
I had no idea.
It's a fantastic world.
Here I am buying cables on Amazon.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
But sorry, Apple, I'm giving up your trade secrets here. But let's get back to racing. So we've established that you might have to drive, and you did, to get to a place to race. But what about cost? What does it cost to be getting into racing, or even just learning how to race and learning how to drive?
Well, there are several ways to approach it. I went straight, basically into the deep end. I went, did a couple of track days and went right into racing school. So that's a pretty aggressive thing. But you can get access to track time for as little as like $50.
Really?
Yeah, and that's a road course. So Toronto Motorsport Park near Cayuga, I think they charge $50.
As you bring your own vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've got lots of open track days and that sort of thing. But, you kind of need to know the etiquette, the protocol, and you certainly need to know about safety. And, if you're, for me, when I was a kid, my car was ready to go to the track because that was my thing. So I had tires for it. I had better brakes and I was good to go. But, if you're going from you're taking a road car that's not tuned for it, it's problematic because you're going to probably ruin the brakes because they generate so much heat that a stock brake pad just isn't going to work. So you have to upgrade the brake pad. But after that, here's the thing: if you want to go to the track, there's two things you need to really worry about.
I'm just being paranoid. I want to hear the audio.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Yep. So two things. One, basically take the stock tire pressure setting, add 4 or 5 pounds. That'll stop the tire from rolling over and generating a lot of heat on the edge, and it'll protect the tire a little bit. Not that it's meant to give you more grip. Maybe it'll take away some grip depending on the tire or whatever the case is, but bump those tire pressures. And I'd change the brake pads to something that that's a little more track oriented
stuff. Like maybe that the average person doesn't know.
Yeah.
They're getting into this.
Yeah.
And where I'm getting at is we did something, Project Erase. It's just to end street racing everywhere or on the street. And we had a multi-jurisdiction group come together. We had police services and the Ministry of Transportation. And the first car that I saw pulled over, and I'll have to show you a picture. It was a Honda. It was slammed. It had stretched rear tires. It had camber. It had a can on it that was loud. That's not. It may have looked interesting. It didn't look that good.
It's not to my style either. But
but they it got charged. It had 6 different tickets that were issued.
Yep.
And there's the car there. I got on my phone. This idea of camber and stretching rubber. I mean,
I don't understand that because it's not effective. Like the reason we put camber in, and I'm going to tell you another thing.
With the stretched rubber, the rim, I don't get it.
I mean, it's a style, but you know, as a racer, I know, like, I know all my racer pals are the same. We look at this stuff going like, these people don't know what they're doing. The reason we have camber, and we're going to talk about a front wheel drive car, but the reason we have camber is to maximize grip when we're in the corner. The car leans over. You basically need to counteract that with camber, so the tire is cornering as flat as it can,
right?
And you've got as much grip as possible.
So you're basically making sure that when you're throwing G's or if you're throwing into the corner, that camber with the roll of the vehicle, I guess, you're now getting a full contact patch, so it's effective as opposed to for normal driving when it's rolling on the inner corner.
It's just that inner 2 centimeters or whatever it is. You're just going to end up wearing out the tire and building up heat there. So you've got a cold outer section, not a warm inner section. You're never going to, like on the street, you're never going to get heat into that tire. You're never going to get maximum grip out of that tire anyway. It's just not going to happen. It's just the dumbest thing. What's worse, however, with a front wheel drive car, you don't want any camber at the rear. In a front wheel drive race car or a front wheel drive performance car, the rear tires they have one job, and that job is to hold the back of the car up. That's it.
Wow.
They're not there to grip. I have no interest in grip in the rear of a front wheel drive race car.
Are there a lot of front wheel drive race cars?
Yeah.
In general?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole professional racing category for front wheel drive.
Well, you were saying earlier that you were testing a lot of these cars that were circuits built on stock in that, so that's the category. But if you were building a ground up a race car, would you want it to be front wheel or rear wheel if you had your choice of making your own car?
So now it's a question of how much you want to spend. That's really what it is. So 10 years ago or 12 years ago, whatever it was, we decided to go racing. We looked at the rules first, and then broke that down and made a determination, and we ended up in front-wheel drive cars.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. See, I'm not a racer, and I acknowledge that. I'm not a go fast guy. I mean, I like the cars, and I think they're awesome. And my wife I don't think my wife would be happy with me racing. She had enough with my one collision.
I'm sure.
Stressed it more.
Yeah.
But I would have assumed that rear wheel is the way to be, or all wheel.
So the way the racing world works is basically in professional racing, they're front-wheel drive cars race against themselves and rear-wheel drive cars race against themselves. There is some crossover, but generally that's how it works. In amateur racing, you can put anything against anything and do whatever, follow the rules and build a car to maximize those rules, which is what we did. And we could have raced, instead of racing Honda Civics, we could have raced Miatas. But we looked at the rules, and the rules gave us a little bit of an advantage.
Gotcha.
So that's it. But I'm not going to say that one is more satisfying than the other. Sure, when you're racing, it's a lot of fun to get back on the throttle, and if you got a powerful rear-wheel drive car, you're going to have a little bit of a drift on the exit. Not the big drifts you see on social media, but just a little bit, and that's cool. But I spent so much time in front-wheel drive cars. They're to me, like, they're so much fun. They're so much fun, and they're hard to drive. Like, they're really, really difficult to drive.
So my first vehicle, I got a hand-me-down car. It was a front-wheel drive vehicle. I remember my uncle who used to work for General Motors. He used to run a factory for them, I believe. And at one point, we used to go to the track because he would actually check the cars to make sure that they hadn't been modified before they were a race. He was one of the officials who.
Oh, so like a scrutineer.
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
And two things from that. One, he would always try and coach me to understanding how to steer and how to apply power and how to regain power in a front-wheel drive car. Instead of letting off the gas, it's put on gas depending on.
Yes.
So that was foreign. And then the other thing I learned is you should always put film in your camera.
Yes.
Because I went to the track to watch these races, and I'm with my dad, and it's just 35 millimeter, and we're clickety. It's amazing. It's on fire. There was a crash. I'm like, this is the best. We haven't had to change 36 exposures in a row. We haven't had to change. No film in the camera.
Oh no.
No. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Two lessons both related to my uncle.
Yep.
And tracks.
Yes.
That's pretty much the extent of my exposure to tracks. So, now for me, again, not a fast guy. I like my motorcycles and I like my trucks, and I like my trucks to have four wheels and have them all have power, and that's just the way it is.
Sure.
So we talked about the concept of where to go, what to go. Like the modifications that you see on the road just tend not to make a lot of sense. At least they don't.
No, they don't. And the other thing with the other mod that I see. I mean, it's I don't know if they're illegal or not, but the big wings on a front wheel drive car, that is the dumbest thing ever, because you don't want grip at the rear of a front wheel drive car, because what you like I said, the rear tires are only there to hold up the back of the car. So basically, the front wheels are doing kind of everything. They're doing all the braking, all the turning, all the accelerating, and the back, you just don't want any grip, because you need a little oversteer to allow it to turn better, and that way you get a better exit and all that stuff.
So the whale tail it would almost counteract the grip on the front by putting pressure in.
Well, yes. So two things. One, they don't work. For front-wheel drive cars, and two, you're never going fast enough in a road car for it to work anyway.
No kidding.
Yes.
So it ruins your trunk, it destroys your resale value, and looks kind of silly.
Yes.
Okay. What if we just mounted it to the hood?
Sure, I've seen that too.
Well, the problem is, you know, now you're obstructing driver view.
That's
it's
right.
a whole other situation.
That's right.
But most of what these things are, and I appreciate, and I've said it on when I was on the interviewed by a news channel. I said, you know, I appreciate that people want to make the car their own. They
Yes.
want to express themselves.
Yeah, I love that kind of enthusiasm, and that's, you know, that's cool. Like, and especially when it's done the right way. And there's the right way to do it, and there's the wrong way to do it. And more often, at least for me, it's the stuff that's done the wrong way that stands out. And you know, it comes from my background in racing. Yeah, I like some aesthetic changes to a car sometimes from time to time. I generally prefer and trust the designers. When they've put something together, they've been working on this for years. So when it comes out of the factory, it's usually pretty good.
Well, I remember when I was in high school, I would put in a stereo. The first thing you had to do is put a nice stereo in. But now stereos are magical. Like, they're so phenomenal out of the factory.
Outstanding. This BMW I'm driving today has a Bowers and Wilkins sound system. It's the upgrade, and it is outstanding.
But even not the upgrade. Like, I was ordering a new truck, and like, would you like the upgraded one for $500 more, and you get like 32 more speakers? I'm like, how many speakers do I need? I heard the one that came with it. I hear the music. I'm listening. First of all, I'm listening to like News Talk 1010, 680 News, and podcasts.
Right.
I don't need a booing system.
No.
And Disney streaming off of
course.
Apple CarPlay.
Yes.
For my kids, but we're not talking about any need. And as we've talked about recently, the fact that it's actually you turn these things up till you're shaking the walls and bothering people outside. You can get a ticket for unnecessary noise.
Yes.
And people, again, they say two things very commonly in the comments to my videos. I bought 500 horsepower. I'm going to use every one of them.
Oh boy.
And my stereo goes up to 20. I'm going to, or I got 800 watts. I'm going to use all. It's just the same thing.
Yes.
Freedom. That's all I hear.
Well, you can do that on the racetrack. That's why we have racetracks.
For stereos too.
Well, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beyond. What do you think about wrapping cars? Do you wrap your cars? Or
I don't think I've ever wrapped any of my race cars. We've designed liveries. Our next cars, which we're not going to talk about, will be wrapped. So it's much easier to wrap them. And
it's your marketing. That's for marketing and sponsors. It's not just because you want a reflective two-tone or multi.
Well, it's not. We're going to have a distinct livery for the race cars, just as we did before. So we had a very distinctive livery. We're going to do the same thing, but in this case, because the technology's changed, we've got more flexibility with the wrap, because it's basically printed material on vinyl, and it's easy to deal with.
A friend of mine just he bought an older model Rolls Royce, and he had a custom wrap made, and it is neon swooshes.
Oh boy!
And I have to show you pictures of it.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
I'm sure
he knows who he is when he's watching. Talking about your machine, it's a unique. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
because it's an older model, and he's done something so completely out of the box.
Sure,
not my style.
Right.
Definitely his style.
That's fine. That's fine.
A lot of people don't realize they have to update the ministry, like for a street vehicle.
Yes.
They have to actually report the change in color.
Even though it's a wrap.
Yeah, because you're
because
changing the color significantly.
Yeah,
and there's a couple of reasons. One, because when we see a multicolor or a reflective pink wrapped vehicle,
right,
and it's registered as blue. It may be stolen plates. It could be all sorts of different things.
Sure.
We don't just assume it's wrapped.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get pulled over.
Sure.
So if you don't want a headache, it's best to actually.
I didn't know that.
And it's free.
Of course,
Or at
yeah.
least I don't know if things have changed. Things have changed recently. Prices have gone up at the MTO. Maybe it's a charge.
Yep.
Maybe it's not. But it used to be free. It's just like a change of address.
Yeah. That's interesting. That I had no idea.
See?
Because
I provided value in this conversation.
that's right. Well,
but so again, expressing oneself, I think is great. But it's those things that make it unsafe.
Yes.
And chopping things and making it noisy.
like cutting springs, for example, which is a common thing. That is such a bad idea because that dramatically ramps the spring rate up. So you get a much stiffer spring, and whatever shock you've got in there, I'd call it a damper, but whatever shock you've got in there no longer can control that suspension because the spring rate is so high. So it's just the disaster of a setup.
Because springs are multi-stage may not be the right thing, but there's a different coil at the beginning, at the end. So at different stages of compression, it changes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
I think most automotive springs are linear.
Oh, yeah?
But there's plenty of progressive rate springs that are deployed, and then as you get into higher end cars, they'll actually mimic that and go a little bit better with a helper spring and a mainspring.
So probably not the kind of spring in a Civic, let's say, that people are commonly chopping.
No. And here's the thing with a Civic, you can go to a well-regarded aftermarket company and get that set up and bolt it right on the car.
So a legitimate, tried and tested, safe option?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, shocker.
Bum.
Damper.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that tends to be one of the big things. It's something I learned very recently, and that's because I went to this Erase event, and a gentleman who was involved in apparently writing the specs on the law for inspection of these vehicles. It's something I didn't realize. Very often we talk about how low can you go?
Yes.
And I'd been told that it was a 1.5 inches from factory down.
Okay.
Well, that didn't mean a lot to me. And as a police officer, it means nothing to me. Because,
Right. How are you going to measure that?
Yeah. So I look for contact between frame and body, or tire and body, tire and frame, lock to lock.
Yep.
But apparently there's another standard, and it's based on lighting. It's the center of the headlight to the ground. There's a minimum and a maximum distance that you can be, and I had no idea. So I have learned things recently.
That's interesting.
That are very cool. I'll show you the docs.
Yeah.
Very cool. But so few of these modifications, I think, really increase anything other than looks.
It's purely aesthetic.
And the whole stretched rubber thing's a whole other thing.
It takes away grip. The tire has a more difficult time doing its job when you do that. It makes no sense, and it's obviously purely aesthetic. It is not functional.
I think a lot of that's when they're trying to lower the car and make it fit with a certain size rim, and you're cutting corners and trying to fit it into the hole.
There's some of that, and it is the fashion, right? The stretched tire thing on a wide rim is kind of the fashion.
And I've seen also where they have the tire almost like it's in the center, and it's just all steel protruding.
I have not seen that.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I don't even want to know.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of bad ideas out there, and we see all sorts. A lot to do with vehicle lighting. Now on a racetrack, I guess lighting isn't a thing because are they taping over or removing certain lights?
They typically the rules would define that depending on the kind of championship you're racing in. But when we're dealing with road cars, they generally have the OEM headlamp assembly. So if you're driving an expensive car, you're going to have the expensive headlamp assembly, and you run into something that's going to be crazy expensive to replace. But with our last club racing program, we removed the headlight and basically built a structure so we had ram air effect. So we would feed the air filter and go straight into the throttle body. So we got a little more horsepower out of that situation. And for the other headlamp, we just fabricated a bit of aluminum, so that if we crashed, it was $5 to replace instead of $200. Yeah.
So let's talk about crashes, because we have a video of a crash. Which one is this?
We got a couple of them.
Is this a crash?
This ends with a crash.
So okay. So this is the Skip Barber clip, and I think that's what it's called.
Yep.
So you're in an MX-5, the MX-5 Cup.
Yes. Yeah. It was called the Playboy MX-5 Cup spec series. All the Mazdas were prepared identically, and this is my mistake. Completely my mistake. You can see I'm by myself. This was during qualifying. And what would normally happen right here is you hit the bump and you get a 4-wheel drift, and I got a bump and the car just rotated.
So, what's a crash like that cost?
A lot of that car was wrecked. That probably would have been $8,000 to $10,000.
That's not as bad as I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean the cars are pretty robust, and I hit the tire wall.
Okay.
So there was some suspension damage, a lot of body damage, and the car was a disaster because the race was the next day.
And I just want to talk about, this is a great segue. You've got a roll cage, a full steel roll cage. You're wearing what I think is a neck brace, a race helmet.
Yeah, so what I've got there, you can't really see it, but what I've got there is what's called the Hans device, and that attaches here. So there's one on each side, and it's basically a carbon fiber collar that sits on my shoulders. And then you strap the 2 shoulder belts over top of that. And what that does is it prevents an injury known as a basal skull fracture.
I imagine that sounds like
That's bad. It's terminal.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So that was that. I mean, I can't remember what the G's are. I'm sure I've got a report somewhere. But the tire wall absorbed a lot of that impact, and there was no need for me to even send any of my safety gear away. But
it was low enough that it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, the G's were, it wasn't crazy. That was, I don't know, maybe a G.5, 2G impact.
So paramedics come running. Was there any concern as they start rolling? Because I imagine tracks have all sorts of procedures and people standing by for just in case.
Yes. So I've been racing at that circuit, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, for 30 years. And until 2017, I had no idea there was a medical center in pit lane. And this was before. So no, in this case, the paramedics, they maybe checked on me, but I was right at the flagger station. So, I gave them the thumbs up there. You can see in the video. But, that was basically it. I left the car and walked up the hill to see my wife, because I can't drive the car anymore. And the tow truck is going to deliver it to the paddock. So there's nothing for me to do.
Right on.
Yeah.
Now you wear a harness, a 6-point. Is it a 5-point?
6-point. So there's 2 shoulder belts, 2 lap belts, and then the double crotch belt. And it's a tough thing. And they go through so much testing. It's so not like a road car setup.
Well, so the reason I wanted to ask you about the belts is, again, I get this question all the time. Well, can I use a racing harness on the street? And the answer is, well, no, it's not legal. And
then the rebuttal is, but it's safer.
Right.
Well.
So yeah, what do you say?
In a crash, if emergency services are there, they don't know what they're looking at. That's the fundamental problem. And the way that there are so many different buckles. Sure, for me who hops in different race cars and that sort of thing, you get used to the different buckles. But a road car has one type of seatbelt, and they all work the same. They've got that bright orange button on them, and that's the whole point of these. So that if you're in a really bad situation, you can get removed.
So I was told by one chap I had a very brief phone call with, and he said he has to be put in by a pit crew to basically strap him in so tight that he's one with the seat. And that when people put their aftermarket in, it may not be done properly.
No.
And 2, that there's no pit crew strapping you in, and there's no cage, there's no race, there's no helmet, there's a whole bunch of other things.
This is the thing. So what you're looking at is a complete system. So it's not just the stuff that I wear, but it's the seat, it's the harness, it's the way the harness is mounted in the car as well. So if you look at that roll bar behind the seat, that has to sit a little bit lower than my shoulders so that my Hans device, that collar that I wear, functions. So if that roll bar or that crossbar is placed incorrectly, the whole system is not going to function.
So it's not just putting on your Amazon purchased straps.
No,
that may or may not meet grade.
and they may. I mean, there's in the racing world we hear about counterfeit stuff, and that's everything from what's labeled as fire retardant safety gear, like boots, gloves, even suits. I've heard helmets now, but especially belts. You find a cheap set of belts that are one of the popular brands of safety equipment, and at a cheap price they're probably fake.
I don't trust anything anymore. I mean, I really don't. I don't. I bought this microphone secondhand. So I like this microphone. I wanted to use this one versus others. So I went and bought it. And it's a bloody expensive microphone. So I found someone selling it. And I found out they make counterfeit microphones. Like,
Oh, of course they do.
come on.
Yeah.
So I went a deep dive looking to find out, does that match? Is there a stamp here? And fortunately, I've been able to confirm that this is in fact a legitimate microphone. But I'm like, I had that sinking feeling. But it's different. This isn't going to save my life in a crash. The seatbelt is. Now, what is funny is that, and many people don't realize, it's illegal to remove an OEM seatbelt system.
Yeah.
Beyond the fact that it's illegal, if you were to put a multi-point harness into your vehicle, you still have to put the OEM seatbelt over
Yes, that's
to
right.
meet the requirements under the law.
That's right.
So this is very frustrating for many people who want to pretend that they're racing on the Don Valley Parkway.
And here's the thing, like driving a race car on the road is the dumbest thing ever.
I'm going to clip this.
Yeah. It's just the dumbest idea because a race car is so compromised that it's not enjoyable to drive on the road. You can't see out of it. It rides rough. It doesn't work. It does one thing really, really well, and that's driving at its limits. That's it. And you can't do that on the road. Part of the argument about taking it to the track is the reason we go to the track is because the conditions are controlled, and you either do a track walk like we do in professional racing, or you do a recon lap. You take a warm up lap to see what the track conditions are like. Maybe there's a new bump, there's a new pothole, or whatever the case is. And that's what I did last week at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Discovered a really big bump on a critical corner. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
And is that just wear and tear of the track as it ages?
That's typically what happens. In this case, they repaved it, and I don't know what happened, but now there's a big bump in the first corner. And I was talking to some of my pro racer buddies who were racing last weekend. And they're like, yeah, we have to drive around it. So I was taking the traditional line and getting that bump, and it was in a road car, so it was a little more forgiving. But a race car, back to this point, a race car is so buttoned down, the suspension's so stiff that it's not that forgiving. So you hit a bigger bump, and it really upsets the race car.
Have you seen some of these modified cars that are so low and so rigid that to go up the driveway of their own house, they have to approach it at just the right angle, and one tire comes off the ground while they're doing it? And it's not a safe vehicle for road use.
Well, there are plenty of road cars, legal road cars
that do that
from the factory, and I've done it many times. So with all the high-end supercars and things that I've been able to drive, they will actually do that on some driveways.
That's not a car I want to own. For me, this is just for my daily driver.
Yeah, so at that point, you got a low car and a really stiff suspension. The ride's not going to be comfortable.
But I get it. If you've got more money than you know what to do with, or you just really appreciate things, and you've developed, you've purchased a house that has a driveway with just the right angle, because it just curbs in certain cities you can't go over.
No, you can't.
And I've seen people bottom out on beautiful cars.
Yes,
and it's sad.
I've done it. And it's the horrible thing when you scrape a carbon fiber splitter that you know is going to cost $15,000 to repair.
Oh. Yeah, my dad wanted to buy a Rolls Royce, and not a car that you're going to scrape the ground with.
No,
but when you mentioned the splitter, we found out that the windshield to replace was $16,000.
Yeah,
and that was the last discussion we had about buying a Rolls Royce.
Exactly.
Actually, sorry, it was a Bentley convertible.
Okay,
Bentley,
so same thing, right?
But yeah, that ended the conversation. I'm like, stone chip.
That's right.
It's no longer about buying it. If someone gifted it to you, you still have to maintain it.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and this is also the same case with race cars. It's not the purchase price of the race car; it's the running costs.
Well, many years ago, a gentleman approached the Toronto Police Service and said, my father or my grandfather had gifted the military fighter jets or fighter planes, I don't know what year it was, for the war effort. I want to do the same. I want to pay it forward. And he wanted to donate helicopters.
Cool.
And they said no. Because it's not about the helicopter; it's about how much it costs. And I think they went to York Regional Police after. I don't remember the story exactly, but they are extremely expensive to maintain.
They are.
So again, it's a whole different game. I was watching a video. They were talking about the brake job for. I can't remember.
Probably the Bugatti.
It was the Bugatti, and I wanted to cry.
Yes,
It's a lot of money.
Well, and it's everything about that car. So the tires have to be replaced on an interval, as do the wheels. So because the car is capable of such high speeds, like incredible, it's like in the 300-mile-an-hour plus range, like really, really fast. The tires have to be perfect, and so do the wheels. So I think every second set of tires you have to replace the wheels as well.
This is stuff I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I know now that you told me, but I'm glad that I'm never going to have to firsthand. I'm just never going to be in that space.
Yeah, and I suspect that a lot of Bugatti owners aren't bothering to do that because they like
Because they're doing 40 and 60 to get to work.
Or they're doing a lap of Yorkville.
Right. And then park it again. So
Yes.
I imagine the resale market is people with 500 kilometers and 10,000 kilometers, but no more, nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be the one guy who drives his Bugatti 10,000 miles a year, but that's probably the one and only.
And in Toronto, it's especially it's not a winter driver.
No. I mean, it's all-wheel drive, but I mean, you've got no ground clearance, and if there's serious snow on the road, you're not going anywhere.
I realize that these conversations keep going into different areas, and we just talk forever. It's fantastic. I'm having fun, but I want to circle back to stuff. Actually, before we do, what's your favorite car?
It's a kind of a specialist car. So there's a company in LA that takes 911s, the 911s from the early 90s with the sort of rounded bumpers, not known to be the most attractive of the 911s. They take these cars, basically strip them and rebuild them with the finest modern stuff. So they've got a very special engine program. You have your choice of transmissions, you have your choice of drivelines. So the company's called Singer, and the founder of Singer is a neat guy. He's a neat guy. So if you're old enough to remember Catherine Wheel from the 90s,
I don't recognize the name.
Yeah, so anybody who was listening to CFNY at the time, or if they changed the Edge, Catherine Wheel was played on regular rotation, I remember the band. So when I got to meet Rob, it was really cool. So Rob Dickinson was part of Catherine Wheel. He was also a car designer, and he loves the 911. And what his company is called Singer, what they do is really honor the 911, and they take that early 90s car, basically put in modern brake suspension, engine program, and then finish it with the finest materials. So the bodywork is carbon fiber, and
is it maintaining the same shape?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen some that go flat nose at.
Yeah, they look aesthetically, they look like they're from the early 70s, but somebody who's a nerd like I am can say, well, that's a Singer. It's not just a Resto-Mod car. Like, that is their work. And they just do amazing work. So they basically take out 600 pounds of weight.
Wow.
Throw in another 100, 150 horsepower, if not more. But it's not a crazy thing. The end product is all about balance. It's a lovely, it is literally the finest car I've driven.
Very cool.
And I've driven Bugattis and all kinds of crazy stuff, but these 911s restored by Singer are just gorgeous.
See, I get the question. It's the reason I ask is I've been getting this question repeatedly in their chats, and my answer is I buy things I fit into because I'm such a product, and it really does change things. Like I haven't driven many Porsche.
They tend to be small.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And I grew up, that was the car I wanted as a kid. My uncle, same uncle I was referring to, he was a Porsche fan. Didn't have one, but he loved them.
Yep.
And would always correct me when I said Porsche, and he'd say Porsche. And it was, won't go there.
No.
But at the end of the day, I wanted one, and I had the opportunity. I drove a friend of a friend's, what is the little Porsche?
Boxster.
Boxster. And it was fun. I didn't fit in it at all, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And I then decided I don't want a Porsche because it's just not for it doesn't fit. But I haven't found anything like I want a Humvee. I'd love to have a Humvee, not a very big car inside or car. I can't call it a car. Vehicle.
Yes.
I'd very much like one, but they don't make a lot of sense. And
no.
I had ordered. My brother and I were going to share was it the H2?
Yes.
I got in it. And I couldn't see out the windows.
Yes.
So everything that I thought I wanted, I've turned out to be something I don't want.
Well, I've got good news for you. I think you can fit in the latest 911.
Really
Yeah, it's very spacious inside. Lots and lots of room.
interesting.
So
I do fold into my buddy's Panamera. Is it? What is
yeah,
it?
Panamera.
I think that's what he's got. 4-door. Yeah, I was able to squeeze into it as a passenger.
Still not big.
No. Okay.
New 911, I think you're okay.
As soon as I win the lottery, I'll be all set.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm still. A
I can help you order it.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I want to pause. I want to set up a couple of photos for you to look at, and but is there another video that we have to look at?
Well, we got a couple of crashes that I sent.
Okay, let's look at those. I really want to get your opinion on a couple of vehicles.
Sure. Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, which one am I looking at? Is this the Micra?
So this is me. I'm going to editorialize. This is me getting taken out in a race.
This is the Micra.
Yeah. So if you look at this carefully, what you find is the gentleman who is behind me started braking at about the same time I did and lifted off the brake pedal, and this is the end result.
Okay, so you got your front camera and your rear camera.
Yep.
Oh,
yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So this was the first race of the season. This was the second lap, and this absolutely destroyed my run at the championship.
Now, it's a Micra, so
Yes.
this isn't what most people look at and go, fast car.
Nah. Yeah.
But racing isn't about necessarily being the fastest car. It's about being fastest in the car that you have,
Yeah.
pushing it to its limits.
Yeah. So in this case, the Nissan Micra Cup is a spec series. So the cars are all identical. So I was, I don't know, fourth or fifth, and you can see all the cars behind me. So it was not a good situation. And here's one of the things I wanted to bring up is that, and we talked about this earlier, is that road cars are meant to crash at road car speeds. They're not meant to crash at race car speeds. That's why we put these safety systems in, the roll cages, the proper seats. Like in that video, you can see I've got the head protection seat, which is standard now, and that stops my head from flopping side to side. And in that crash, that was necessary because what happened, you don't see it from the outside, but I landed driver's side down at about 120 kilometers an hour.
Oh, wow.
And a Nissan Micra is not meant for that. So thankfully, I had the seat, I had my Hans device, helmet, and harness, and all that stuff.
And without those things, you could have been seriously injured.
Without the certainly without a head protection seat, I would have had serious neck injuries for sure.
Someone had said or had asked about putting full cages into street cars, and I'm like, no.
Can I also say,
Please?
Dumbest idea ever.
Yeah, because then you're basically, you have to be with a full helmet, you have to make sure you don't bounce off that cage.
Well, what happens with a cage is that's built within the confines of the car, and what that means is you've got steel tubing now 3 or 4 inches closer to your head. And I mean, in a very small road crash, you're going to hit your head on this stuff. Like it
usually turns into brain injury.
Exactly. Like again, the dumbest idea ever. And that's why you have a race car and you go and play with that, and it does that job really, really well. And then on the road, you have a road car.
So we talk about race cars and being on the track, and it's not a cheap thing. So what do we tell the young folks and who are currently angry watching this, saying it's not attainable, it's not something I can afford to do, I want to just drive my Honda Civic, that's all, whatever I've modified to, and I want to go fast?
Work harder.
That's the only
That's
option.
it. So that's what I did. And I'm pretty hard and fast about this. Like you can't. It's the dumbest idea to go fast on public roads because the conditions are always changing. Like on a racetrack, you know what's up. And we don't have to cross traffic. Like there's nothing.
And it's not even talking about law. They're just talking about everything
I know.
else.
Yeah. So for somebody who wants to wants to drive fast on public roads, to literally take it to the track. That's it. If you want to do drag racing, do drag racing. You want to do a track day with sports car style track days, do that. And it's complete. If you own a car and you can't afford the minimal cost of a track day, you've got problems already. And you can get on a track day for $50 with minimal wear on your car. So that that's what you need to do.
And I like to say go-karting.
Karting's great.
I think it's awesome, and I can barely squeeze my butt into one,
Yeah.
but I can do it.
And there are so many great karting programs, not just for fun, that you don't even need to own the kart. You can go to these arrive and drive racing programs. I did one 2001, I think. Ran the whole season and ran it like a racer.
Competition kart program.
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things I have to say. One, it honed my ability to get up to speed really fast. So what that allows me to do now in cars is I can qualify I can set my fastest qualifying time on my first lap
Because of your experience in karting.
Mm-hmm.
No kidding.
So the arrive and drive karting, the cool thing was over the course of the season, all the karts would get wrecked. So every single one drove differently. And on the warm-up lap, you had to figure out how it drove. And I was able to do that. And then that and I was able to apply that to cars. So with car racing, I always set my qualifying lap or like my time early in the session, no question. And we could get into reasons, but karting is amazing. And if you want to compete, the costs are so low.
As if you want to buy in, but like you can go to places, public places, like this K1. It's an electric
K1's
place.
great.
I had so much fun there in the past. After my crash, I went and tried it out once just to see how it felt. It hurt, but it was still fun.
Yep.
And I think I'm ready to go back. So maybe we can go and have a race at K1 and
Oh yeah,
play around.
I'll teach you a couple of things. No worries. No worries.
Okay, there's another video. There's one that was a big one, right?
Yeah. So that one,
16?
that's the 16. So this
Let us
has
get
been
that.
shown on television all around the world.
Okay.
So
Micros again?
Micros again. So this is my first race. I actually picked up a car 2 days prior to this, and I was not planning on racing it. So the promoter said, "Oh, stay," and I'm like, I don't have radios, I don't have data, like I'm basically flying blind, and all I had was a single GoPro with me.
So you bumped the car in front of you.
Yeah, which is, I mean, they apparently they changed the rules, but I thought bump drafting was legal. Nonetheless, this is where everything goes literally sideways. So what you don't see is that on the right there are actually two cars barrel rolling. You just see one, but there's actually two. And everything is spinning in front of me.
But that wasn't because you made contact.
No, it had nothing to do with it.
Unrelated.
Yeah, I mean, there was 20. It looks like somebody ripped off my my video. Oh, look at that!
The Star Wars music.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
and like a TIE fighter going through.
Oh yeah. Which is, I'm a Star Wars fan too, but it was
There should be X-wing. TIE fighters, the bad guys.
Well, I wasn't the bad guy in that series, so that's fine. It was the wildest thing, and I released the video after I realized everybody was okay. I didn't realize what I had because it was like such a crazy experience to just go through that. I'd never been through a crash like that before.
It's intense.
It certainly was. And, like I said, I didn't have a radio in the car, so I had no crew there. I had a buddy there and I had nobody to talk to. And of course the race went red flag, so no more racing at all.
It was a complete shutdown.
So what they did is they cycled us through that circuit has it can be divided. So they cycled us through a shorter section, kept us running, and then cleaned everything up, and then we went racing again.
So okay, this is actually again a great segue, because people don't realize that. All the systems in place to make it safe. We talked about the fact that paramedics might be on board. That I assume fire is going to be there.
Yep.
And the training about what to do when things go south. All of those things that the average driver just doesn't have from going to young drivers or learning on their own from grandpa or whatever.
Yeah.
So you said it's red flags. They pulled you off. Was anyone injured? You said everyone was
No,
okay.
everyone. I mean, there was minor injuries, but everybody was okay. Yeah,
That's good.
And that's like we're talking about Nissan Micros, which would normally just like
crumple
like into nothing. And the two cars are barrel rolling in that clip, and that speaks to the engineering and the manufacturing of that roll cage.
Which is really what keeps you safe at that point.
Yeah, because the car, instead of the whole car crumpling, what it does is the car crumples around the roll cage.
It's a new skin.
Yes.
I this morning I'm coming into the office and I was passed like I wasn't moving and I'm doing the speed limit or,
Yep.
or about there, and I
Yep.
was passed like I wasn't moving by a vehicle that then had to hammer on the brakes to
Mm-hmm.
be the person in front of me the rest of the way.
Right.
But those cars, we actually see horrible carnage when
Yeah.
when things go south.
Well, it's the speed differential, right? And that's the the fundamental issue on roads is that speed differential. That's why we have speed limits. We've had cars on the roads for over 100 years. So, we have to work together as drivers, and you guys have to do your job as well. But I've been racing for too long. I just have no time for going fast on public roads. And the other thing about racing is that it teaches you to look as far ahead as possible all the time.
I was so proud of my daughter this morning.
Mm-hmm.
We're driving, and she goes, "It's a red light." I'm like, "It's a red light. Where?" I call her Eagle Eyes. She was looking so far down the road.
That's great.
And I'm like, that's exactly what I want you to do for the rest of your life. When you're in a car, look that far ahead. She was two or three lights at that point. She
Yep.
was talking about the right.
Sure.
I was really proud of her. That was a really big moment for the traffic guy's kid.
Oh, yeah,
to come up
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's where she's looking. I'm like, okay, tell me all of them as we go. You call them as you see them. It was really cool.
Yeah.
The games you play. Like I even have her sitting in appropriate positions because she's the next person in line to drive. I want her paying attention.
Yes.
And so far she's prepared, but not everybody should drive.
No.
I'm convinced.
Well, there's that. And I'm just going to interject one thing. This idea of self-driving cars doesn't exist. Cars do not drive themselves. There's none that are available today that will drive themselves.
I got a chance to be in a vehicle that was autonomous with supervision.
Wow.
That kind of not driving in Toronto anymore. It hit a tree.
Oh, really? So was this like an experimental kind of thing, or? Okay, all right, we'll leave that. We'll leave that alone. But there are no self-driving cars, and you can't buy one today.
But now, how does it work with the ones in the States? Because I see videos of people with this vehicle that has all sorts of cameras strapped to it, and it's a taxi that you get in. And
Yeah.
does that work?
So a driver can't, but those are commercial. So you can't buy a self-driving car. It simply doesn't exist. And the whole idea of Tesla with this full self-driving, that's not the same thing. It's a really good level 2 system. And basically any car from, that has basic cruise control to, this high-tech BMW that I'm driving that does have low-speed follow, hands-off, low-speed follow on the I think maybe under 60 kilometers. It'll drive itself. It'll steer. It'll
But it's not
accelerate and
telling
brake.
it where you want to go and take me home. It's not
No,
that future cop.
Exactly, but that's as far as it goes. So between basic cruise control and this car with its ability to kind of drive itself on the freeway in a traffic jam, that's what we call SAE level 2. Next is level 3, which we're going to skip over relatively quickly. We're going to go into level 4, which is more geofence driving, where the cars will drive themselves, but the driver has to be ready to intervene. So the level 5 is a vehicle without pedals and a steering wheel.
Yeah, I'm not ready. I
We're-
like driving.
Yeah,
I
so do
want
I.
to drive.
Yes. Yeah, me too. And there's so many advances that need to happen before we have anything that's self-driving.
I'm in no rush.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. I want to get those things ready. I got to shut it all down. We'll pull it
Yep.
back up. I'll show
Yep.
you some pictures. I'd love to get your opinion.
Oh, I
on
can't-
some
I can't
cars.
wait.
And so this is the hard end, and we'll start up again in a second. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a couple of things. First, I'm going to pull up a video.
Okay.
And this is one that got a lot of attention. It's a video that we stitched.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I liked
You liked it. Yeah, good.
So yeah. No. So I'll let you list the things that you see. Would you pull it over if you were a cop?
I would pull it over and put it straight on a tow hook.
So you'd pull the plates.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep. So like several things. I mean, there's so much negative camber that the car can't steer or brake properly. For one, there's just not enough tire in contact
You wouldn't
with
take
the
me to
road.
the track?
No, and that's the other thing. Like that doesn't work for the track either. So there's also, I don't know what kind of suspension there's going on, but like it seems pretty buttoned down. There's no travel in it at all, so it's not able to absorb any road imperfections. So
I think the only thing that that's being absorbed is the bounce of the tires.
yeah, I bet you. If we look at the driver, he's probably bouncing around in there.
Yeah, he's moving.
Yeah, like it just doesn't make sense. Like that is it's purely for aesthetic. That does like as a performance car, that does not work. Like none of that works.
And his this is what I was talking about earlier. Is that the wheels, the rim is inside. The metal rim of the tire is out on the outside of the tires. Like
So there's another rim that accepts the bead, so it looks like an extremely stretched wheel or extremely stretched tire. That's what I'm guessing. I don't know this part of the car world.
It's different.
And the funny thing is that as that car came from the factory, it's lovely to drive. It's a delight to drive.
What is that?
So this could be the Scion, the FRS, or it's otherwise later known as the Toyota 86, and there's a Subaru version called BRZ. And they are lovely cars to drive. So it's like a little bit bigger than a Miata or an MX-5 with a roof, and has that same kind of just simplicity and it's just a lovely driver's car.
When we talk about, I mean, those are the camber. We talked about camber and tires in this one, but
yes,
there's also some other issues. I don't know if they stand out to you.
I'm just thinking in terms of steering, braking, and suspension.
And you've covered it all.
Yeah.
But there's no front plate on there.
This is an Ontario
registered
car.
Registered car, so it has to have a front plate.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a big deal for a lot of drivers. A lot of car owners don't like putting front plates on.
I agree. My cars aren't compromised aesthetically with front plates, so it's not a big deal. But if I were driving something interesting like a McLaren or a Lamborghini or whatever, yes, they have to have plates, and in most jurisdictions around the world they have to have a plate on the front. But I'd be tempted to find another solution.
I always suggest tow hook adapters. I think that is the way to go. If it really bugs you that much, you got to do it.
Yep.
Tow hook adapters.
And all of these high end cars, these performance cars, they all have a tow eye on the front, so it's easy to do.
Makes sense. But the things that I see is the headlights.
Sure.
They're red.
I think they change color.
Well, yeah, they're doing something there, but they also have. So he's got LEDs that change color, and then the actual projector bulb looks red.
Right. Okay.
So that's a thing. The tattoo or the banner across the front windshield is an obstruction of the view, so that's not legal.
That's not a great place. That's exactly in your line of sight.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But I get it. This particular person, this is his product. It's his advertising.
Right.
Now, speaking to the owner, I did speak to the owner.
Okay.
Because he said, "Hey, that's my car." so he says he assures me he never drives this in Ontario. It's trailered everywhere. This is just what he does for shows, and this is apparently in Florida. So I showed this car when I was in Orlando. I showed this video to the sheriff's office.
Yes.
And apparently it's illegal there too.
Shocker! Wow.
So let's stop this because the loop is driving me mad. Burbles. A lot of noise coming out of exhaust, and there's a whole discussion because that vehicle does not have an exhaust or it doesn't have a muffler.
Okay.
But there's a discussion now about burbles and flames and straight pipes and catalytic converters being removed.
Sure.
What's your take on that?
The especially with modern cars, they're so highly engineered. They're meant to work that way, unless you start, fiddling with the actual tuning, and you can't really do that on a lot of cars. So all it does is compound problem after problem after problem. So I think part of this burble tune thing started on the OEM side because for years I've been driving some of these like factory cars that are the little bit more performance oriented version. And when you release the throttle and you're decelerating, they go pop, pop, pop.
And that's basically explosion of unspent fuel in the exhaust system, right?
Yes, yeah. So the fuel leaves the combustion chamber and actually combusts in the exhaust system, but those systems are tuned for that. So taking a car that is not designed for that and throwing a burble tune on it will cause you problems long term. There's no question about that. But yeah, I think it's the OEMs to blame, and there are several of them that are complicit in this. So we'll name names: Jaguar, Porsche, BMW.
They're all doing it.
They all do it.
And then everybody else wants to copy them because those are the cool cars.
Yes, and then what happens in the aftermarket is they want to do something even crazier. So they're louder, they're more aggressive, to me they just sound offensive.
And you say sound offensive, and that's a big problem we have in the city. We have a huge problem of motorcycles, cars, vehicles of all kinds making too much noise.
Yes,
And people are losing their minds. They're not sleeping. They're not. The babies aren't sleeping. They're not able to work from home.
Yes.
What would you say is the best way to deal with that? I mean, we ticket them. We ticket them when we see them. But is there? Do we have to create a car culture that doesn't want loud, obnoxious sound? Like, how do you change minds?
Well, this is the thing. I think we, car people generally have an idea of what sounds good, and sometimes that includes a little bit of that burble on overrun. But what these burble tunes, they're fake. And what those OEM car makers are doing, that's all fake. They're just letting the gasoline combust in the exhaust. It's fake. It's not designed as a natural part of the combustion process or how the engine operates. So to me, I just don't like fakery to begin with, and that's kind of where I draw the line. So it's fake. It's obnoxious.
It's silly.
It's just goofy.
And then the fact that people say it's a victimless crime to have all this noise.
But it's not. It's not. So I live on a quiet street, and every once in a while somebody will. And my block is stop sign to stop sign. And every once in a while, and of course my office faces the street. Every once in a while, somebody rolls down the street with one of these, and halfway down the block, they lift off the throttle, and it's fake pop, 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 pop. And some of this stuff is really loud. And of course, I can see some people not understanding what that is and think gunshots, fireworks, whatever. I ran into one of your colleagues the other day at my local dog park, and they're like, "Did you hear any loud noises?" And I'm like, "What kind of loud noises are we talking about?" Because I probably can identify it. She's like, somebody reported gunshots. I'm like, I definitely did not hear that, and I didn't hear any silly tuned cars either. So
interesting.
But yeah, the burble tunes are just dumb. Another straight up
that. There's
dumb
no question.
thing.
No, but then there's like the bikes that are just winding up and causing crazy noise.
Yes,
and it really is a problem. I had a friend of mine who had a Harley, and his was not an obnoxious Harley, but I would not ride behind him because it was too noisy at speed.
Yeah,
I have a Honda. I have a flat six. It's got 6 cylinders and 6 carbs, and it makes less noise and is less obnoxious than these others, and it's got tons more power.
Of course,
power and noise aren't
there is a correlation.
Yeah,
yeah. The more noise your car makes, the less power it's making. Yes, true story. Yep,
that's good to know because so all the folks that are making noise are really just weenies.
Yeah, yeah. So with a race car, we make decisions based on when we're able to make them. There's some championships where we can't do anything because the car is specified in that mechanical specification, so we can't do anything. With our Hondas, I basically have hearing loss because they were so loud.
Wow.
But we tuned everything from the intake side through to the exhaust side for performance.
But you're in a closed environment or an environment where far away it's now you're stripping things away. There's no insulation. There's all sorts of things happening beyond that of just making noise. And you're probably wearing hearing protection.
Yes, and I still have hearing loss.
Yes,
it's wonderful.
I wear as Motor Squad. Aside from the fact that our bikes are stock, there's no loud exhaust, but they're still hearing just from wind.
Sure.
Just wind passing over a helmet causes hearing loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
So earplugs were a thing. And I don't think between stereos and loud exhaust, I don't think people appreciate what they're doing to themselves.
No.
20 years, 30 years from now, they'll be deaf and that'll be an issue.
Yeah, I'm counting all the boomers to go through this hearing loss thing so that when I'm ready to have something implanted, there's going to be some really cool technology.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my plan.
I like it. What do you think of this thing?
Oh my, that is I've seen that stuff in Japan.
I don't. Do you think this would be an effective spoiler?
No.
I don't even know what these things are.
I think if you drove that at speed, that unless that is somehow reinforced, that wing would simply pull the brackets off the trunk leg.
I actually think it's plywood. I don't know. It looks like it's just those are L brackets screwed into the body. The body would just fold up.
Yeah.
And you can see on the the covers of on the wheels the fender flares. I don't understand.
Bizarre. And then the exhaust pipes that are 5 feet tall.
Yeah, this is I don't know what this is called, but
there's a name to this, and I know one of my pals would know, but I don't know what it is.
Zuko.
Something like that.
But they're all wild. and there's a
Yeah.
whole. I mean, we're looking at some, and maybe they'd be okay for going through a parade, but this is
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. So we're looking at, and I'll put them on screen where so that everyone can see. But these are things that would take a pedestrian out of the game.
Yeah.
Never mind the driver of that vehicle. This is very scary.
Yeah, those I like you can't even call that a splitter because it would be ineffective aerodynamically anyway. But it extends so far to the front of the car. You're gonna take someone's ankles out.
Too much.
Yeah.
Brian, I've had a lot of fun chatting with you. This stuff is wild and great. I have to make a slideshow of this, and I'll send you stuff for reactions.
Sure.
But I'm so glad you got to come down and chat.
Yes.
We've spoken for well more than an hour.
Yeah, we have.
I know that people have fallen asleep listening to us.
So take it to the track.
Yes, take it to the track indeed. I hope people take it seriously and listen to that because we see too many people getting injured. Never mind the folks who get away with it. It's the people who don't.
Yeah, and there plenty of people like me who are happy to help someone get into this world of whether it's track days or racing schools or whatever, and we're always here to help.
How does someone follow you? They want to catch you on social media with all your drop all your stuff so I can put it on screen.
It's super easy. It's Brian Makse everywhere. So Makse, and whatever your favorite platform is, easy to find me.
And soon we'll get you on TikTok.
We are on TikTok now, so I think I'm up to 12 likes. Yeah, very exciting.
It's a party.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's been a slice. TPS Traffic Jam is done, and we'll do it again soon.
Looking forward to it.
And very soon I'm coming to join you on.
Yes, you're going to join us on Dave's Corner Garage.
So something that was really cool. I know I've told you already, but I'll share it with everybody else. I got a phone call from an officer who was on vacation. He was down south. He's in the States on vacation. He calls me. He says, "I heard you on the radio," and it was me. I was sitting I was remote coming into your show, which is on at 10 a.m. on Saturdays.
Yeah, here in Toronto on AM 740. But this was different. Yeah.
Well, it's syndicated, right?
Well, we're on Sirius on Saturdays and Sundays at 10 a.m.
Okay, so
Sirius 167.
They repeat the show again.
Yes.
So he calls up. He says, "You were going on about a license plate frame on graphite." It's just too fun. So he was very proud of the fact that he was hearing his service on the radio, but he was amazed that he was hearing it in the States.
Yeah. Well, that's the power of Sirius, right? Like we can reach. Just not just Toronto, but the United States as well. So, yeah, we've got some good reach, and it's a fun show. So we're looking forward to having you on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in studio even. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. We'll be back again to do stuff and things. I keep looking at the screen and the camera.
We need to look over here.
I don't know where I'm looking.
Yeah.
But we're out.